It is obvious this contest cannot be decided by our knowledge of the Force, but by our skills with a tag video. So, if you're new to my channel and you're not familiar with a lot of the people who are sort of in my movie fan community here, one of them is Ian, aka Forkerball, and he's been producing lots of videos lately, and I wanted to respond to a couple of them. One in a series that he's been doing is movies that should never, ever, 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 ever be remade. And I'll get to that in a moment. But first I wanted to respond to the Star Wars tag. This isn't his tag. It's something that he did in a long succession of YouTubers. But I sort of wanted to respond to his because his answers are often so similar to mine, it seems. First of all, well, let's see this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions. Quick tag, quick tag. Favorite episode, meaning the numbered ones, the films. For him, he said Empire, and I agree. Empire is the best of the episodes. Favorite ship? He picked the Super Star Destroyer that Darth Vader commands in Empire and Jedi. Only he's not on it as much for Jedi. He's, you know, it's mostly left to Admiral Piet to command that ship. It's called the Executor. It could also be called the Executor, I guess, but I think Executor is the right pronunciation. Anyway, such a massive, impressive ship. You know, so intimidating. It dwarfs the other Star Destroyers. What was that? I don't know. And it's just you know, a gargantuan thing, and I love it. It's great. It's just really, really exciting and impressive. I don't know if it'll appear in Rogue One, but I kind of hope that it does. But since it's a pre-Empire movie and a pre-Star Wars movie, I'm thinking probably not. Probably just regular Star Destroyer is going to show up in Rogue One. Coolest lightsaber. He said Darth Maul, and you know what? I am totally on board with that choice, but my particular pick is Dooku's lightsaber. First of all, it's red, as all the bad guys are, and the red lightsabers are the coolest. And the design of his is really neat. It's an angled handle, which makes it easier to just point your blade directly at someone. You don't have to twist your hand forward this way quite as hard. And also it's got a little sort of a safety guard on it that looks like a blade, which is really cool. Yeah, it's a very, very cool looking weapon. And if I had a lightsaber, I'd like it to be that design. Have you noticed how Luke's lightsaber has like a little box on the side of it? It's like, I don't know, battery pack or something like that. How difficult must it be to handle a fight with that little box on the side? It must disrupt your grip. It sounds very inconvenient. Whereas Dooku's design seems perfect for actual fighting. Favorite Star Wars actor? Ian picked James Earl Jones, and so do I. What is Darth Vader? What without James Earl Jones, and what is Star Wars without Darth Vader? That voice is irreplaceable. It has to be him. Do you pick the dark side or the light side? Ian picked the dark, but I gotta go with the light just because my conscience would bother me, I think, if I succumbed to the dark side and started hurting lots of people. Yeah, I'm not the kind of guy to be vicious and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'll go with the light side. Favorite character? Ian picked Yoda. Yoda's a very memorable character, but again, I got to go with Luke. Luke is one of my favorite characters in all of movies. I identified with him more strongly than any of the other main characters when I first saw Star Wars, and this was when I was, you know, in elementary school. That's when those first movies came out. So yeah, I gotta go with Luke. Strongly identify with him, more than Han anyway. Han was a rule breaker, and I certainly wasn't a rule breaker. I did what I was told, mostly. And finally, favorite droid. Ian picked BB-8, and that's a very, very good choice. And to be honest, I'd have a hard time picking a favorite droid out of all the droids, mostly because none of them made such an impression on me that I would go, what What's my favorite? I don't know. You know, I mean, they all have their virtues. 3PO has his virtues, believe it or not. Being able to speak any language is pretty awesome. BB-8, you know, has that little flamethrower thing that looks like a thumbs up, which is great. And R2, of course, is incredibly resourceful. So it's impossible for me to really pick a droid. I really like the design of the medical droid on Hoth, though. He kind of looks like he has a skull, and it's kind of dark blue, very, very dark blue, and parts of his body are transparent. He's got some cool armatures. If I really had to go with a single favorite droid, at least as far as the design goes, I might go with that one, just because it's cool looking. Yeah. And Ian also mentioned the droidicas from Phantom Menace and the other prequels, the ones that roll to a stop and then expand and have miniature force fields and blast arms, and those are pretty cool. The other bumbling kinds of droids from the Trade Federation and Phantom Menace and the other prequels, I really liked how photorealistic they looked in some shots in that movie, but I wouldn't call any of them my favorites. So yeah, I'm going to have to go with the Hoth medical droid. That would probably be my favorite droid in the whole series. If I hadn't pick any particular favorite droid. Doesn't have much personality, basically has 2 lines, but I always just kind of like the design of him, and if I recall correctly, I did have that particular action figure back in the day. So those were the 7 questions for the Star Wars tag, and now I'd like to talk about remakes. This is something that Ian and James, DVD Collector 1974, have both been making videos about, and I guess it's an ongoing series. I don't know how many separate videos that they're doing. I have 2 movies in particular that never ever should have been remade but were. One of them is RoboCop, one of my favorite movies of all time. The other is Halloween by John Carpenter, which is, you know, a great work of art. I think not just one of the best horror movies ever made, but just one of the best films ever made. It's just a masterpiece, you know, it's slasher movie perfection. And they were both remade into, you know, movies that were either terrible or just plain dull. And so, yes, never should have been remade. And also, let me lump the Total Recall remake in there, because that's another favorite of mine from when I was back in high school. You know, so violent, so tremendously fun, and crazy. And then they got this PG-13 remake, and the only thing that would have been better about the only thing that would have made the Total Recall remake good is if Colin Farrell at one point had some sort of funny line about Kate Beckinsale's accent. Kate Beckinsale was in the Underworld movies, and her Underworld director also made the Total Recall remake. I think they're married in real life. So she starts out, she's English, she starts out the movie with her American accent, but when she switches over to her, you know, evil assassin agent persona, she switches back to her natural English accent. And there's no point in the movie with Colin Farrell goes, "Why are you talking like that all of a sudden?" That would have been funny. So, a movie, there are lots of movies I think shouldn't be remade. Anything by Stanley Kubrick to start with. And, you know, a number of Scorsese and Spielberg movies and other movies that I admire, and plus lots of movies that would never ever get a remake anyway because their name recognition isn't that great. Like Freejack, you know, I think that Freejack would probably benefit from a remake. And then there's Miami Blues. Miami Blues is a really cool dark comedy with Alec Baldwin and Jennifer Jason Leigh. No one's ever going to want to remake that movie for obvious reasons, because half the world hasn't even heard of it, if not more. But that it's great. It's great as it is. But I'm going to go with one of my favorite directors, David Fincher, and Seven, which is a movie that just totally blew me away when I first saw it. I just was completely devastated by this movie, and I just couldn't believe how dark it was and how far it went, and just the mood of it, and the style, everything about it, and the writing, the performances across the board is just fantastic. The music, how could you ever remake this movie? Unless Trey Parker and Matt Stone did an animated musical version of it with John Doe singing his diary entries and each of the murder victims, you know, singing about, you know, whatever happened to them, you know, and you know, from the afterlife maybe, you know, and Morgan Freeman having songs about how weary he is, and or doing research into the 7 deadly sins, and Brad Pitt maybe having a song or two. I'm sorry, I'm using the actors instead of the characters' names. Obviously, those same actors wouldn't play the parts. But that would be funny. I would probably, and there might actually be a 7 musical put on by some independent theater company. I don't know. I know there's one of Cruel Intentions. Somebody did a Cruel Intentions musical, and actually the 3 lead actresses from the actual movie went there to see it, and this is like 15 years or so after the film actually came out. They had a blast because it's meant to be comedic, and so any remake of this movie would have to be like super comedic. And so Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the South Park guys and the Team America guys, doing an animated musical version of this movie, I would accept that. I would be excited about that. But otherwise, no, never. Don't do it. And don't do The Fly by David Cronenberg either, because that's already a remake. Actually, The Fly, John Carpenter's movie The Thing, and the 2 Scorsese remakes, The Departed and Cape Fear, those are remakes that I'm totally on board with. They're fantastic. But yeah, by and large, in other words, I don't think that remakes themselves are necessarily terrible in and of themselves, but leave the great ones alone. The great ones really ought to be left alone. And there are plenty of horror movies that fall into that category, and yet all of them, every single last one of them, need to be remade. But this one, this particular horror movie, and it is a horror movie, please don't remake that one. I would not appreciate that. Thank you very much. And if you do, I'll come to the set and sabotage it. That's a promise. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please check out Ian and James's videos. The links to their channels are below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Later.